Hello everyone, welcome back to the SMITE Comprehensive Guide to Atlas. This is a full game. However, while in this particular match, I originally went into this match. This actually requires a small bit of background here, so I'm going to pause this briefly. I originally went into this match with the full expectation of finally doing an episode in which I utilize Atlas with the war flag. However, because of the enemy team comp, I decided not to go into war flag, because when I recorded this is either the day before or the day of war flag returned. I think it was the day of war flag's return. However, their team composition was high enough in damage output or potential damage output that I decided that I was going to go into Sentinel's Gift instead. Why is this? Two reasons. Keranos and bots Scylla, standard form, ADC, jungle, mid in that order. Atlas and Gilgamesh are the reason why I decided I needed Sentinel's Gift. Now, I've been talking quite extensively about how much damage Atlas can bring to bear, so if I fall behind this Atlas here, he's going to hit much harder, right? If this Atlas gains levels, gains experience and stuff, this could be a problem for me and my team in terms of damage output, but more importantly, Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh plays extremely well with Acts of Animosity, to the point where a lot of Gilgameshes build it. This provides Gilgamesh with some really strong magic damage potential in addition to his physical damage, which means that the magic physical damage balance of the enemy team isn't so hardcore on the physical side as it normally would be. Yes, Gilgamesh is physical, but if he builds Acts of Animosity, he is bringing to bear almost as much magic damage as well. So this becomes a bit of a concern for me. This is more specific to Gilgamesh. To some extent, this can also be true of Erlong Shen. Some Erlong Shens build this way, but it's much less common. A lot of Gilgameshes go into Animosity, and the big threat here is more in the bringing on of additional magic damage rather than the actual damage itself. It's the fact that it's magic damage very specifically that makes this something of a concern. Okay? So for those specific reasons, I choose not to go into War Flag, and I go into Sentinel's Gift instead. Now, here, actually, we're going to go back a little bit here. You can actually see where the Keranos is going for the full purple, and we're going for the three camps. Now, how possible this is really depends upon your duo lane. Alright? This is purely, he absorbs some damage for a bit, and then he's going to be able to heal that back. I'm going to be absorbing some damage. I bust out my health potion here, and my multi-potion to keep, my damage relatively normalized. And, quite frankly, this is primarily possible because Keranos and Atlas do a lot of AoE type damage. If this was somebody with a bit worse group clear, like, say, Athena, for instance. Well, not Athena. Sobek would be a better example. We wouldn't be able to do that. We would have only been able to stick to the two, right? So we get here. We're clearing the waves, of course, right? He's trying whatever. I'm trying whatever. Now, also, quick note. I know that Prophetic Cloak has been nerfed a little bit, but it's still a little bit better than the Gauntlet of Thebes. Now, we almost kill him here. I actually waste my I want to go back for that really quickly. So we slam these minions. I go in. He makes the interesting decision of trying to pull me in. He was probably going to try to get me under tower, which is why I backed up. And then I use Horrific Emblem way too late. I should have used that right after he failed his gravity pull. I did not. We probably would have done more damage at that point. But, of course, hindsight is 20/20. Now, we have the advantage here. Now, I'm backing up a little bit here because I don't know where the jungler is, and I'm getting a little concerned, right? I go forward so that way I can get the opportunity to to give Keranos the opportunity to get those minions. He's pressing forward. I'm getting a little nervous still. I just want to do some damage to the minions. I'm backing up. Backing up. I'm doing this damage to the minions. What I'm trying to do right now is set up so we can take that cooldown camp with the Manticore right there. Grab the Atlas. Keranos gets some damage in. It's a good opportunity. I still don't know where the jungler is. Here's the jungler right now, and I realize that probably we're doomed, right? Now, at this particular point, I back off because there's nothing I can do to save him. My cooldowns are all off. You can see that my cooldowns came back online just in time for him to die, right? There was nothing I was going to do. If I went in there at that time, I was just going to die with him, which accomplishes nothing. So Thor is coming in. He wants a gank. I don't know necessarily how effective this is going to be, but I go for this anyways because I have the health. He seems to be relatively healthy. I get some good damage down here. Thor is on the verge of killing Keranos. There he goes. That's great. Can we get Atlas 2? That'd be great. Unfortunately, we don't. But the fact that we took the Keranos is really important here, which is also why, as you can see immediately, that the Thor is really on top of things here, right? I just want to point this out really quick. I'm going to skip back forward. The Thor immediately goes for the Keranos. This is not because... I don't need to pause this here. Thor did not go for the Keranos because the Keranos was a lot easier to kill. At this point, the Atlas doesn't have a ton more protections. Thor went for the Keranos because, as a jungler, knowing that our ADC had died, it was very important for him to take out the enemy ADC as well, which is also why I also stuck to the Keranos as a target. Our ADC died, their ADC needed to die to keep things in balance. Obviously, we lost first blood, which is a bit of a downside, but at the end of the day, they're still going to be a bit balanced due to the fact that their ADC did also die. It's very, very important. That is why Thor went right for that Keranos. That is why I stuck to that Keranos, right? Now, I am going to continue to stick here. I'm not level 5 yet, so I don't want to leave quite yet. I'm also trying to build up the gold for Prophetic Cloak so I can start stacking that. By the way, that's been reduced down to 8 seconds instead of 10 seconds. Right? So, you know, I'm looking to play this a little safe because right now what I want to do is ideally set up... I'd forgotten how much Prophetic Cloak was. I couldn't remember if they changed the amount of gold it cost in the changes to it. I won't call it a nerf because it isn't technically. But I goof my gravity pull. He does a better gravity pull. Well, he times it better. And I have to back up. And I'm just looking to help out with Keranos here. And I get to level 5. I'm about to hit Prophetic Cloak. I'm looking to back. So I tell him that. Very important I inform him of that. He goofs his gravity pull, so I decide I'm going to dedicate some damage here. I throw out my ult. Now, the reason I throw out my ult here, I'm actually going to pause for this because this is pretty important. I throw out my ult there for a very specific reason. I know I am about to back. Alright, I want to go back to Fountain. I want to grab Prophetic Cloak. I'm level 5. I want to rotate to mid lane. I throw out my ult to do as much damage as possible to increase the likelihood that the enemy Atlas will also back, so that way that will give me time to back myself and not have to worry about Keranos getting slapped while I'm gone, okay? That is why I throw that out there. I want to intimidate the Atlas. Now, the Atlas is low mana, he's half dead. I don't have anything else I can offer right then because obviously I was low on mana. Off I go. So, at this particular point in time, I decide, you know, I start going towards mid lane, but I see the Atlas hasn't left. The Atlas hasn't left because he's not level 5, so he's not going to be inclined to leave. So I'm going to head back over there. My intention at this particular point in time is to try to get the Atlas killed or so low on health that he has to go back and I can rotate then. But I don't want to leave Keranos alone against these two as low as mana and health the Atlas is. And you can see Hunbot's behind in the jungle there. You can see him working on that camp, which is what Keranos is warning me about. And originally, I'm thinking that the Hunbots is backing off and that the Atlas is backing off. The Atlas shows up back here. Now, this is actually a really big indication that Hunbots is still over here, okay? Because you have to understand, the Atlas, the enemy Atlas, has really low mana, and he's 2/3 alive. He's missing a third of his health. Here's Hunbots, which is why I was going over there, right? I was going to make sure that Hunbots wasn't lurking right here. He hits the ward. The Atlas is still kicking around. Hunbots is theoretically leaving, so I warn mid lane. Caranos backs off. I don't know why the Atlas is still here. The Atlas really shouldn't be here still, right? The Atlas stayed around probably due to the Hunbots being there, but now he is still kicking around. He leaves lane. I'm looking to split one more wave with Caranos before I leave, right? Just so I have a little bit of golden experience. I can hit level 6 here. Lovely. And then off I go to mid lane where Hunbots is ganking. Right? So Caranos is going to be looking for the purple buff. There's nothing I can do for Janos, so I'm going to help him on this. There's nothing I'm going to be able to do in mid lane right now. Anyways, clear this. And then, theoretically speaking, I'm going for middle lane. Now, I will quickly be changing my mind because the enemy Atlas returns to right lane. And again, I don't want to leave my Caranos alone there. See, you can see Atlas right there. So I'm going to kick around in the mid lane for a little bit. And then there's Atlas over there, and I see him not leaving. Despite the fact that I'm in mid lane, I've made an appearance here. Maybe he didn't see it, which is what I'm guessing. But I'm going to rotate back to right lane because I do not want my Caranos to get double teamed here, which is what they're trying to set up for. So at this particular point, set up for kill on someone. I pick Atlas because he was closer to the edge there. We both use our ults. I hit Caranos with that. Thor's coming in. I don't know where Hunbots is, so I'm kind of worried. But between Thor and Hunbots, I'm more confident in Thor showing up. Right, he slaps Caranos. I grab Caranos. I somehow get that kill. I think that was the launch part. I somehow get this kill. I think that was minions. Again, for Atlas, it's not a huge deal. But that is exactly what Caranos needs over there. Even though it was 2 assists, it's still going to give him time to farm. More time to farm than the enemy Caranos. It's going to give him some golden experience. I can roll that golden experience into some increased damage for my team, which is something you're going to see throughout the match. That I'm able, well, for the middle part of the match, you're going to see me being able to use that. Now, at this particular point, I am going very specifically for... I think I'll end up going for Sovereignty because I am, again, still very concerned about the potential damage output of the enemy team. You can see Caranos and Thor killing Hunbots. I'm over here in mid lane. I'm going to be looking to help out the Janos here. The Caranos is being chased by Atlas. I'm not too concerned at this point because the Caranos has a decent amount of health. Here's Scylla with her ult. No idea what she was doing. I successfully grab her. I'm going to pull her under tower, which is what I was waiting for, because this is fairly obvious that at some point she was going to be... You can actually see this, right? She has to use this at some point. Boom. I know that timing well enough because I've got her to diamond. And boom. Nice amount of damage. Unfortunately, the Janos wasn't quite as prepared for where she was going to be teleporting to. That is not a criticism of Janos. It's just something that happens. She's a bit difficult to predict sometimes with her escape. Yes, I mean, you see the thing happening ahead of time, but she can teleport to that so fast that it can be a bit difficult. Now, the Atlas is still in right lane, but I am not going to go back over there for 2 reasons. This time, I'm leaving this alone because of, 1, I'm 2 levels ahead of him. So is Caranos. 2, the Caranos is a level ahead of the enemy Caranos. My Caranos should be able to play safely and still have very little trouble clearing the wave effectively, alright? Really shouldn't be a problem here for him, so I shouldn't need to go back over there. I should stay in mid lane and try to lure the Atlas very hard out. Stay with Janos, be able to rotate with Janos or Thor if need be. Right, that is what I'm working towards here. Especially since the Janos is a little bit behind the Scylla. I try to ult her to death here, but unfortunately I don't hit hard enough. It is what it is. But she does have to back, which does give Janos some opportunity to catch up. Of course, Hunbots took some damage, so he's going to be in a bit more of a vulnerable position for the next fight. Here's the Atlas. Finally, I've lured him to mid lane. I'm going to be getting some poke on him with Janos. I'm not intending to kill him. In fact, I get his ult, which is really nice. He does get a really great gravity pull on me, which does hit me pretty hard. But I do get his ult, which is nice. And then I'm just trying to keep the Hunbots off of the Janos here. I completely missed the gravity pull, which surprises me great. You can actually see me reacting with confusion there. I'm not sure how I missed that. I absolutely spazzed out on my accuracy there, but The Hunbots is kicking around in left jungle, and I warn... Now, this is fairly significant, because I warned the Loki of this. I do wind up getting sovereignty. I had forgotten. Again, I am somewhat concerned about their damage output, the enemy team's damage output, but I do warn the Loki of an incoming Hunbots. So I'm going to be rotating over there after having gone from the fountain, because I don't know where Atlas is. Right, there's Hunbots ganking Loki. Loki is going to say, okay, thanks. I did call that. There's the Atlas, by the way, as I kind of roughly expected. I'm a little surprised he was standing in the jungle waiting for some reason, but at this point, my goal is to save Thor. Alright, that is my goal here. I'm busting out my ult to intimidate them. Here is a slap on Gilgamesh, which is great. I'm trying to get the Hunbots, because now we have a health advantage. Not going to happen, so I'm diverting my attention to the Atlas. I'm not expecting to kill him. Again, he is the support. He is going to get out fairly safely. But, you know, we can force him back. We can get a bigger gap between me and him, which is nice. So now I'm going to return to mid lane. Thor is pressing left lane for some reason. And off I go. Thor is looking for some jungle farm. At this particular point, I'm somewhat concerned because I now don't know where Hunbots is. He's backed already, I'm sure. Right, Thor gets an excellent kill on Sola. I thought he was going to need me. He did not. So I just work on some of these bastions. My Keranos is being pressed by theirs, but again, ours has a level up, so I'm not concerned. Here's Atlas, who has clearly been back, which is what I was hoping would happen in the left lane. And Thor immediately gets pressed and has an absolutely fantastic escape, by the way. That is fantastic escape artist right there. Absolutely amazing. Now they go on to the Janus, which is a bit interesting because he's got no real support going on right here. He tries to pull me and he misses. I can understand why he tried though. He also used his ult for some reason by himself. He, in that circumstance, should not have. It wasn't going to accomplish anything. Here's Hunbots, who you could argue is late to the party a little bit here. They are going to kill Janus, which is unfortunate, but Loki picks up the Hunbots. Solo's really low. I can stop this Hunbots. Here's Gilgamesh, which surprises no one because Loki was over here. I'm trying to save the Loki. I get a great gravity pull on Gilgamesh here, but unfortunately it's not enough. And I don't have the mana, unfortunately, because I haven't built any kind of MP5 at this point. The Loki will say, okay, thanks. I'm out of mana. He can see that. It's like, come on, dude. I'm, at this point, only sticking around in lane to try to make sure that the wave does not go under tower. That is my only concern right now. I had my passive. I had enough for, at that point, my mana had regenerated enough to get me a single round of pulses. Well, I say that, but it wasn't a ton of pulses because I ran out of mana. But anyways, good enough to keep the wave out of the tower, which is my only minimum goal there. I can safely back at this point. I decide to stick around to go for one more. You can see how absolutely terrible this is, because I get a couple of pulses off, and then I just kind of sit there for a second. But at this particular point, Janus is back in lane, so I can back. Right, at this particular point, I'm going to be looking for some magic protections. I go in for the Shogun's Kusari, right? I wanted to think about it for a little bit. I go on ahead and I grab some wards. Again, wards are very important in the current meta. And off I go back towards mid lane because Thor is clearly kicking around looking for something in mid lane. Right, there's Atlas. Of course, I need to be there, obviously. Make sure that Janus doesn't get slapped. Make sure that if they go on Thor, I am there to help Thor if I need to be. Thor is looking to ult. Alright, that's fine. There he goes. I bust out my ult. And I am looking to just lock down the Scylla. Janus absolutely picks that up. It's absolutely fantastic. Here's Hunbots. Again, you can argue that he is a little late to the party. It's a much easier argument in this case. And I am, at this point, just trying to figure out what the Hunbots is going to do. Because if he goes on to Janus, I'm going to need to save Janus. If he doesn't go on to Janus, I really... you know, that's fine. He backs off. We get some poke on him. Nothing really big. I'm just, at this point, kind of applying a little bit of pressure here just to keep Hunbots off of Janus, which is my, again, only concern here. Now, you'll notice that I go just... I have no problem going up to the edge here. This is because I use my gravity pull. That's fine. He uses his gravity pull right here, so I know for the next 10 or so seconds, I can go right up to the edge of this tower and be totally fine. Alright, now the Atlas used his ult there for the same reason I used mine earlier. He's trying to intimidate me away from the Hun bots. He's trying to save the Hun bots. I'm trying to keep the Hun bots off of Janus. Alright, that is... But he used that ult for intimidation tactics. Similarly to how I used it earlier. Now, Thor ganks the Keranos. I'm concerned because I just saw Hun bots go into right jungle. I'm concerned that the Hun bots is going to come over and gank this too. I'm afraid of a counter gank. So they kill the Keranos fast enough where I lose that concern. I just am no longer worried about it. The two of them should be able to handle the Hun bots if he shows up. Right, Hun bots is not as high in level as Thor is. Here's Scylla. She whiffs her crush, which is partially the Atlas's fault. Right, the Hun bots actually does kill the Thor, so I made an incorrect assessment earlier. That happens. At this point, I am trying to get the Atlas out of here. Why? Very specifically because if the Atlas isn't here, we stand a pretty good chance of killing Scylla, but here's Hun bots, which is of course concerning. Here's Scylla's ult. She gets the Janus. This is a bit concerning. I'm trying to get her killed. You can actually see the Loki coming in, which is why I initiated on the Scylla. Hold on. I was too busy talking about other things. You can see Loki right here, right? So I'm trying to lock down the Scylla some way. I fail, unfortunately, and the Loki doesn't get to her, but I am able to get some good damage on Hun bots. Hun bots is now, in a bad position. Keranos comes over and helps me kill the Scylla. Again, I don't intend to get that, but it's fine. We get our hands on the Atlas, and I am trying very hard to not die to this tower. And here is the Keranos, who is 100% going to kill me, which is fine. I'm doing very well at this point. And he has used his ult to kill me, which means he is now fairly even with our Keranos in terms of abilities, and our Keranos is, of course, a higher level. He comes in here, he just absolutely slaps this poor guy, and then he turns around and fights off the Hun bots. The Hun bots almost successfully killed the Loki. The Hun bots couldn't pursue that further because, of course, if he dedicated any more to that, the Keranos probably could have killed him at that point, because the Keranos is also a higher level than the Hun bots. Alright, so at this point I'm going to upgrade my Horrific Curse a little bit there, just for a better cooldown. They do get the Hun bots, they get the mid tower, they get the Scylla. This is huge. This is the point at which our team is far enough ahead, even with the Thor's death there. We are a good bit ahead in experience where we stand a really good chance of winning. This is the point where the enemy team really starts to go downhill. Up until this point of the match, it could go either way, but at this particular point in time, our team is far enough ahead, and right now what I'm trying to do is just prevent him from stealing that, by the way. I use my passive on that. I do successfully get that, but we're going to start turning this around and getting some... We're going to start to win this. We're going to start winning this. Now, I really want this Gilgamesh to die because, of course, as I mentioned earlier, if he decides to go for the Axe of Animosity, we could see some difficulties here. So his death is very important there for our team. Unfortunately, our Keranos dies on the other side of the field, which is a bit of a hiccup. Obviously, that was because the Atlas was over there. The enemy Atlas did the correct thing here. When he saw that I was in left lane attacking Gilgamesh, he went to right lane. This is the correct move to make here. Alright, because he wasn't going to be able to get to the left lane in time to save Gilgamesh, so he might as well get our Keranos killed. Because our Keranos right now is one of our higher level people, and that would help his Keranos get to a more acceptable level. Right, they also got their tower out of our tier 1 right lane out of that, in exchange for us getting their tier 1 right lane. We're going to get the Pyromancer here, which is fantastic for us because this gives us a great avenue for getting another tower. Loki takes the left tower. I'm going to be going over there to try to save Loki. Unfortunately, we are way too late. So I'm just going to specify that I did call that, right? You can actually see earlier where I called that he should be careful. He claims he's playing the full game alone. Untrue, considering we just ganked Gilgamesh earlier, but alright, go off. Here's Scylla. Now, I'm going over here because Thor is... Right, hold on. This is actually very significant. So Thor is over here fighting in the jungle after Loki dies, and I'm going over here to help out. He ults. Alright, so I figure he's going to get out. He goes in. I turn around, I go back towards him. right? Because I'm watching the Thor on the minimap the whole time. Scylla shows up behind me, and now my priority has changed. It has gone from helping Thor get, kill the Hunbots because the Hunbots was low to getting Thor out of this situation. But he starts backing. Alright, that's fine. I don't see the Scylla chasing me, although she still could be. I actually shouldn't have left the Thor that quickly, in retrospect. I should have waited a second or two just to make sure he was fine. If Scylla had been following me, he could have been in trouble. So that was a mistake on my part. Nothing happened, but it could have happened. And that was a mild misstep on my part. Again, I should have stayed a couple of seconds while he was backing just to make sure he was going to be fine. Now, I'm heading over to right lane because right now, I don't know how much pressure they're going to be. Look, I accidentally throw my Astrolabe. They called Gold Fury, but I was originally heading over here because I wanted to make sure that the Keranos wasn't being pressed. They had the Atlas because I hadn't seen Atlas in a while, right? Great move by the Thor there with that wall. Now we're in a really odd position because we just cleared the Gold Fury and the Atlas is pretty deep in here. So if we can kill the Atlas, we're in a really good position. So I'm looking to try to get this Atlas killed, right? Keranos dedicates some he really goes in on this. Now I'm trying to get the Keranos out of here. I get transformed. Thor kills Scylla and Hunbots. I unfortunately failed to save the Keranos, but I can at least ensure that their Keranos dies, which I do with my gravity pull. And now at this point we have Gilgamesh here, who I am now also trying to get killed, right? He jumps over the wall. I take the wrong way. Well, I suppose it wouldn't have mattered in the long run. But I'm just trying to get this Gilgamesh killed. Boom, Thor gets him. I really didn't need to be there. At this particular point, I believe this is the point where I make a terrible strategic decision. Loki calls for a middle lane, and I agree. Now, the Loki is the solo laner. Not a bad necessarily call. I clear this wave, so we have that wave. And then I go in for the mid lane. I should not have. I should have turned around and bailed. This turns out to be a big mistake. This turns out to be a problem. We barely turn around, alright? This is a really interesting series of events. So first, we go for this tower. Janos dies to Hunbots in the background, not too surprising. Loki does not go for the tower and fails to kill Scylla, so now he just dies for nothing. Thor is being chased. He's probably going to die. He dies. I'm trying to go back. I succeed, somehow. Not sure how they didn't see that, me disappearing into the jungle there for that, but okay. Grab an increased shell because now we're in a bit of a problem. I'm concerned because we were, like I said earlier, we were in a really good spot earlier. We're in less of a good spot now. We have a much smaller lead than we did before. They do the same damn thing we just did. They go for our mid tower. And they successfully take the tower, but we're all coming up fairly fresh. My Keranos is absolutely slapping a bunch of them in the next week. I fall back a little bit. The enemy Atlas uses his ult. Janus slips behind them with his ult, and he starts absolutely decimating some people with damage. I've grabbed Atlas. I've got my ult out. I hit a bunch of people with my ult. This is a great attack opportunity. We have Loki here. Loki ults in. He gets a bunch of great damage on some people. Right? They're now in full retreat. I'm looking to just try my best to get something. Here's Atlas. Boom. Trying to get this Atlas here. Hunbots comes in. Boom. Getting the Atlas killed. Atlas dies. Fantastic. Loki goes for the Hunbots. I'm just tanking the tower for him. Gilgamesh is trying to kill me. Thor ults. Kills the Keranos, which is amazing. We're about to kill the Gilgamesh, which again is huge. We take the tower. Scylla comes back in. Almost kills me. But I stick around because I'm getting a lot of health from my passive. I have Prophetic Cloak fully maxed. I have HP 5 out the wazoo. I see Hunbots coming in here. I'm going to come in here and save the Loki here. I'm going to do everything I can. I unfortunately don't help kill the Hunbots. He does barely get out, and I'm stuck here because the button no longer works like that. So I'm looking to get out of here. Scylla somehow doesn't see me. I notify her and then leave. Right, she's going to try to ult me. I'm going to try to bait this out. I do. Boom, pull her in, and almost die from my troubles. I need to get out now because they've all respawned. But that was a really great fight for us. We really turned that around because they do, again, the same thing we did. They really dedicated hard for a tower, tier 1 in this case, but they took it. But they lost a lot of people in the process. That puts them right back to where they were before, which is kind of funny. Now, I grabbed Sentinel's Embrace because Obviously, at this point, we're hitting the late game. I want to boost my allies' protections as much as possible. Yes, I'm overcapping my physical protections. That's something I'll address at the end of the game later on. It's not a concern for me right at this moment. Right now, I just want the protections, right? I'll probably be grabbing some form of magic protection later or swap out a physical item for dual protections, right? Now, at this point, I'm sticking with the Loki because he's the one farthest out. And he tells me, hey, look, I've got the speed buff. Take this blue buff, which is really great awareness by the Loki. Loki was a bit complainy, but very good player. Right now, I actually want to talk a little bit about the builds because I'm looking at the builds very specifically because I want to see whether or not I should swap out my physical protections now or later. Now, there's a couple of things I want to talk about really quickly here. First off, Gilgamesh, as I've noticed earlier, because I was looking at items very early on in the game, of course, he's got the Axe of Animosity. The fact that he's building so much in terms of attack speed does indicate to me, it's a sort of a flashing neon sign that, hey, Gilgamesh is thinking about animosity. He's got Shogun's Kusari for attack speed. He's got Talisman of Energy for attack speed. He's got Berserker's Shield for attack speed. The likelihood that Gilgamesh is going to do the one thing I don't want him to do, which is go into Axe of Animosity, it's looking pretty damn likely. Now, I've prepared for this with, of course, Sentinel's Embrace, with Prophetic Cloak, with Shogun's Kusari, but what this indicates to me is probably I'm going to want to swap out either Sovereignty or Berserker's Shield for some physical protection, for dual protections, or grab some magic protections. Right now, my knee-jerk thought is, hey, I should probably grab Talisman of Energy, is my line of thought here, because Keranos and Loki both also benefit from that. Right? Scylla, of course, has the tablet, but she's a little bit behind. She doesn't have a lot of stacks on it. That's fine. Keranos has a lot of lifesteal here. He's got Asi, and he's got Devourer's Gauntlet. Now, despite the fact that that's a lot of lifesteal, and he's got Death's Toll, I don't intend to build anti-heal, because he is the only one on the team healing anything even remotely approaching anything like a good amount of health. Gilgamesh is healing nothing except for the very 10% lifesteal, I think it is, from his jump circle. Hunbots has, I think, 15% at a Bloodforge with only his auto attacks. Keranos is the only one self-healing anything approaching a substantial amount, and because he's squishy, he's really not a big concern, right? So I'm not worried about it, right? But that's what I'm thinking right now. So I am leaning towards Talisman of Energy at this particular point in time, more than anything else. Get really close to full capping my protections. I'm going to wind up with like 310 magic protections once I grab Talisman of Energy. Just go really gung-ho on the protections here. Now, the Gilgamesh is at the Fire Giant. Thor has seen something I don't. I don't know how he saw that the Keranos was over here. I think he was originally going to go for the Gilgamesh, but saw the Keranos when he went up in the air. Either way, the near death of the Keranos puts them in a really gross position. Thor goes in there and kills. Well, I kill him by accident. Loki dies to the Hunbots. It's fine. We kill the Gilgamesh, which is huge. We're about to kill the Hunbots. I use Horrific Curse. Keranos kills him. We're about to kill the Atlas, obviously, because Hunter versus support is not what you generally want. Scylla's already used her escape. Thor wipes her out, and this is game. Now, I don't mean this is game in the fact that we're going to push this Phoenix and win. However, obviously we don't have the time for that, right? Keranos is about to come up in 20 seconds, and it takes us a little too long to clear this Phoenix. Even with the bomb that Keranos has, the Pyromancer bomb, this takes us a little bit too much time because we don't have minions, which is fine. However, we are able to do what is known as the final fight setup, or the last team fight setup. There's a bunch of different terms for it. Everyone calls it something different. I call it the final fight to reference the series because kicks. But right now we're going to be taking the Fire Giant. We've all respawned, and we have tons of time to quite freely grab this Fire Giant. I throw that only so I can attract the Fire Giant's attention early. Which means we're going to be having, not only are we ahead by 11 kills and 5 grand gold, but we're all going to be higher. Well, most of us are higher level than our competition. I'm 2 levels higher than Atlas, right? Thor goes in, he kills the Keranos right away, and I'm looking to get this Atlas killed so he can't stop us killing the rest of his team. I'm dedicating everything I've got to this. Again, it's still very important to kill the supports. Thor comes in, he's slapping down the Scylla. I'm trying to get her killed now. Alright. Get some damage on her. Kennos finishes her off. Unfortunately, the Thor dies, but we get Hun bots. We're about to get the Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh goes. Absolutely fantastic. Now, despite the fact that we've lost Thor, right? Janos calls attack the Titan. Keranos wanted to take the Phoenix in the tower. The Janos makes the right call here because the Janos makes the correct call, but it is a bit risky because Keranos is about to come back up. But we do some really impressive damage. I'm saving my horrific curse for when Keranos shows back up. That is what I'm waiting for, but I don't need to. We take out the Titan beforehand. Very little problem. Now, you've probably noticed that I used primarily the horrific curse, the horrific emblem, to slow down the enemy and help keep allies alive. I used it to try to keep Janos alive one time. The second last team fight, I used it to make sure that the Keranos would kill the Hun bots. Right? Now, I've already talked to some extent about the builds here, so I'm not going to be spending as much time on this, right? There's actually not a whole lot to say in general here. The builds on the builds for everyone are fairly standard, other than Thor's interesting choice to sell his starter item in favor of Arondite, which is very interesting. It worked out great for him. It can work out great for junglers, depending on how much time you intend on spending in the jungle and how you play the late game as a jungler. I personally like Boomba's Spear because I get to heal off of jungle camps whenever I need to. It's down to personal preference. There isn't anything necessarily wrong with that. But beyond that, fairly standard builds here. There's nothing that stands out too egregiously as being too eyebrow-raising, other than Gilgamesh's interesting dedication to physical protections in the early half of the game, despite the fact that we had a Janos who could very easily have ulted his way to the Gilgamesh and done some pretty serious damage. That was a bit of a risk by the Gilgamesh. The fact that our Janos never did so is straight up fortunate for Gilgamesh, because if Janos had ulted to the solo lane, Gilgamesh would have been in some really deep waters there. Other than that interesting eyebrow-raising piece of good fortune for Gilgamesh and the risk he took involved in that, other than that, there's really nothing particular to say about these particular builds. There just wasn't anything particularly stand out about this. The Atlas, there's nothing wrong with the Atlas's build, the enemy Atlas's build. It's just that I was able to pull ahead via some accidental kills and the benefits of Thor just being a little bit better on the rotations. The Hunbots actually, congrats Thor, I don't record this, but the Hunbots actually shouts out that Thor is doing a really great job jungling. They have a really nice conversation about jungling. Both junglers did do well. The Hunbots did do his job. Yes, he didn't do his job as well as Thor. That is true. But Thor also has the benefit of a much longer range ult. The Hunbots did very well for what he was working with. So, no shame on the Hunbots. He did a really great job with what he had. Okay? In fact, both teams played fairly well in general. But this was an interesting example of a match in which it was more about why I didn't go into Warflag. Because this is not a bad team comp for me to have built Warflag. My allies could have really used Warflag quite effectively. Loki could have used it with his auto attacks, his backstabbing auto attacks. Kennos could have used it, of course. Thor could have used it with his ult. Because if you don't know, Thor's auto attacks after he lands with his ult do lightning, kind of like Pele's ult. But yeah, could my team have used Warflag? Yes. But considering my concerns, and I suspect that the only reason Gilgamesh didn't get Acts of Animosity is because we slapped him down too hard. The Thor did a really great job of keeping the pressure on Gilgamesh to help out the Loki. But yes, at the end of the day, I do believe that the Gilgamesh was going for the Axe of Animosity, and if this match hadn't gone as well as it did, I would have been, you would have seen my strategy pay off dividends. It really would have. It just so happened that in this particular case, our team played well enough that the Gilgamesh never had the opportunity, right? So, with that being said, I hope this shows you a great example of how effective Atlas can be even without War Flag. Thank you all very much for joining me. If you liked this, please like and subscribe. If you didn't, please ignore me. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, ideas, suggestions, or requests, please leave them down in the comment section below. And thank you all very much for joining me, and have a great 24 hours.